from there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's do that. How to forgive. 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 What is it? What is it? Is it that human beings find it easy to forgive? Or do human beings find it easy to forgive? Or is it that we simply forget or cease to care? In the first place, do we find it, are we predominantly a forgiving kind? Or are we, or is vengeance, or do we uphold vengeance over forgiveness, generally speaking? Right? Like, I've met a lot of forgiving people. It's like, of course, let's say you could say it depends on what needs forgiving. For how long is one willing to hold on to a grudge? Or it's like, it can go from, this guy stole my money, right? This guy stabbed me in the stomach, or this guy killed my family. This guy abused and killed my family. I start off with the most vile examples possible. It's like, I'm trying to put this in perspective, like, right, like, I'm trying to take this as seriously as possible, right? It's like, this guy stole my money, this guy broke my tooth, this guy cut off my arm, or this guy massacred my family. This guy abused and massacred my family, right? Burnt down. It's like, to what degree are we willing to forgive? It's like, if someone does the worst thing you can never imagine, if someone does to you the worst thing you can ever imagine, can you imagine also then that there will come a time where you will let it go? The answer there is no, right? No. Well, no, of course not. Well, maybe there's like a couple of yeses. Maybe someone may say yes, but I think it seems to me that generally the answer would be no. And maybe down along the years, you would surprise yourself, and maybe that would change. Maybe that would change along the years. But I think generally speaking, maybe the answer is no. It's like, you're going to do the worst thing to me I can possibly imagine. Like, the worst thing I would never want to happen, and you think I'm going to forgive you? Say the guy turns a new leaf. It's like, say the guy makes it very difficult for you to forgive him. As in, or no, he makes it not difficult. I think you would, if someone wrongs you in the worst way possible, you would want that they sustain themselves as the demon that they are, as the demon that you see them, and therefore you would never want to forgive a person like that. But say years later they turn another leaf, right? They become another person. You were a loving father when they did this wrong to you. Imagine the movie Sicario, right? Well, in this case, the guy was still a drug dealer and a mass murderer, but he had a whole family of his own. There's this character in Sicario. Some long ago, this guy was like a former cop. This gangster comes, kills his family. I think it was something like he beheaded his wife and threw his little daughter in acid, in a vat of acid, right? Like the worst thing you can ever imagine, right? It's like this guy was finished. They destroyed his family in the worst way possible, and from there on, he fell. He was a hero, and he fell, and it was a fall arc. He fell tremendously. He fell tremendously to the degree that he became the kind of man who existed only for vengeance. And he goes after this guy later. Later on, he goes after this guy. He finds the guy. At the end of the movie, he comes. He sneaks into his luxurious house. He comes, sits at his table. The guy is eating supper with his family. He's eating supper with his family. He sits at the guy's table with a gun, with a silencer. He's got his the big man of the house, sitting at the front of the table there. He's got his wife there. He's got his son there. His daughter. I think he had a son and a daughter, or he had something like a son, a daughter, and a wife. Right? He has the whole family there eating. He's a civil man. He's an atrocious man that keeps away everything that he is and presents himself as the perfect dad at a dinner table. He's that kind of guy. So even in this movie, it's not like it was made easy, but like it's the fact that this man who was wronged, he had fallen to such a degree that he was willing to kill maybe in more humane ways. He put a bullet in their head and they fell over the table, right? They died immediately. They probably, they were scared. There's the fear, there's the pain, and then there's death. And maybe they feared, but maybe there wasn't much pain. And so, that was that. He comes, he frightens this guy, he frightens this villain. This guy he's saying, "Hey man, it wasn't personal, it was business." This guy is saying, it's like, "No man, that was personal to me. This is personal to me." It's like, it's not even like what kind of guy is like, "Guy, look man, I didn't mean to do you like that. This was business. It wasn't personal. Like don't take it personal, man. This was just business." It's like, you're so stupid. Like, what the are you saying? It's like this guy, he was saying anything he could, right, to save his family at that point, right? He just thought of like the dumbest thing to say. And it's like, no my guy, this is personal to me, right? Seconds later, he drops his family, he drops his son, drops his wife. They fall over the table. This guy, he's freaking shaking. And this guy who was wronged, the vengeance, this avenging guy, he looks at him, and he drinks in all that fear. He drinks in all that fear, right? He has this moment of vengeance where it's like, yes, right? Maybe you did worse to my family, but I got you back. And this guy, he's there trembling, he's like sweating. He's just seen his family murdered before his eyes. And then he's shot in the head. So there you go, right? So where was I going with that? I don't want to laugh because I just told something terrible. Where was I going with that? Yeah, so what I don't think, maybe I'll make another rant about this. I'll make another rambling about this. This is something, maybe not. This is something I wonder, are people, what is it? Are people more forgiving? Are people generally more forgiving as a collective? Or is it the latter? Or are people usually more prone to vengeance than forgiveness? Right? Like, say, here's an example. Are people more prone to forgive Hitler? The ultimate example. This is a really, Hitler is the guy, right? He's the guy. You want an example of atrocity, Hitler is the guy, which is sort of ironic too, because he's actually not the worst. he's not the worst of the devils of the 20th century. He's not the worst of the devils of his time in terms of quantity and maybe even inventiveness. Well, I mean, he didn't do it personally, but in terms of like the guys that he had, that entire thing that he had organized, right? He's not even the most inventive, but like let's go with Hitler, right? It's like, are people? It's like, no, okay, well, this is a ridiculous question, right? Like, no, people are not going to forgive Hitler, but like, who? It's more like people don't really care, or people cease to care. It's like you're it's like it's. I don't think. Okay, maybe. No. Okay. All right. I think the answer is no. People would not be willing to forgive Hitler. I don't think. It's more like people would not care because maybe you hear about this terrible guy. This guy is responsible for the deaths of these people, all these people, millions of people. And it's horrible, and he's a demon, but like he's a devil, right? It's like the embodiment of evil, of like a demon. This is like a worldly demon. This is an earthly demon. This is a very famous demon on the earth. A man demon, a man turned demon, a very famous one, right? Who amalgamated and created a pocket of hell at that point in time on the earth, a significant and notable pocket of hell. So, is it that people are willing to forgive Hitler? Or, well, no. Or is it that they don't care all that much? It's like you hear about this guy, he did all these terrible things, and you think about it. Oh no, that was all very terrible, right? But then you stop thinking about it, and then you see a comedy about him, you laugh, right? Oh, that guy, what a villain! He was such a villain. Oh man, what a freaking villain, right? You laugh, you make jokes. Is making a joke, does that mean you've forgiven the person? Well, it's certainly that you're more lenient on the guy. It's like, yeah, you're making jokes about this guy. It's like, yeah, everyone knows he's a devil. So like, what more do you want, right? I think you're going to be less likely to forgive, Hitler if he had a direct impact on your family, right? A person like Hitler, right? Like, but like overall. So maybe it is that we're more forgiving as a collective, but maybe not so on the individual level. I think it becomes a lot more difficult to forgive someone on the individual level than as a collective, because the collective, not everyone can say that they were hurt by a person, but by a person questionable of forgiveness. I think maybe as a collective, it's more like we're more forgiving as a collective, and it's like we're more forgiving, or we cease to care. We don't care as much as a collective, and maybe and surely it is stronger it's stronger on the individual. But then let's say, is the individual more forgiving or more prone to want for vengeance? What is it? And is this a question worth asking? Well, maybe not, but maybe it's interesting, perhaps. Right? Maybe it's an interesting question. And maybe if I'm to answer that, maybe I can ask myself. No, no, right? I think anyway. I'm running in circles now. It's like, so generally, it's like if I can think of like the worst thing I would not want to happen, and someone did it to me. It's like, no, I don't think I'm gonna forgive them. Or maybe if they did it to me, I would no, because of the values that I uphold, perhaps I would be willing to forgive them, right? But to what extent? If maybe they do it to someone that I love, right? To what extent am I willing to forgive that, right? So yes and no. We cannot forgive. We cannot forgive. We cannot forgive. We cannot forgive. There was no. We can forgive, but I once thought. I think, but of course. What is it to forgive? It's like, as a Christian, as a God-fearing human being, it is that under that value system, you must always forgive, because if you can't forgive someone, how do you expect God to forgive you? If you can't forgive yourself or someone else, right? How do you expect, God? And maybe you can argue saying, well, maybe I'm not as bad as that person who I don't want to forgive, right? Yeah, fair enough, and true. That's true. That's probably true. But at the end of the day, you can't really argue with doctrine, right? It's like, I think, and no matter, I think this is true anyway, in whatever situation that you're in, I think, as bad as things get, you should always want to forgive, because the consequence there is that if you don't forgive, then with exactly that Sicario example, you become the kind of person who would perpetrate such an act equivalent, if not, an act as bad, if not worse, than the person who perpetrated it upon you in the first place. It's like either you get your vengeance, however long the sweetness lasts, you get your vengeance and you commit an equally terrible act, and now you're damned. You're damned. It's like a not even like a religious damnation. You psychologically damned yourself. It's like a psychological damning. It's like, a wrong does not, two wrongs does not make a right. This is so I think, in any case, whether people find it hard to forgive or not, it's like, I suppose here the point is like, or like, the moral is that you should always want to forgive no matter what, and maybe that sometimes that can be pushed to the limit, and it's not so easy to forgive. But I don't think anyone questions that. I just wonder if we as individuals find it easier to forgive. Or do we find it easy to forgive? Or, this is actually the question, I realize. Do we find it easy to forgive, or do we simply cease to care after a prolonged amount of time? It's like, man, like I don't want to think about this anymore. Like I don't even care anymore, right? Like do you just decide, I'm tired of holding on this. Like this has worn me out. Of course, it's not always like that, but like to the person who, well, I suppose there's a difference. It depends on how personal it is, right? But here, I'm trying to think of it as under the belief that human beings are animals. It's like I don't think animals hold grudges. right? I don't think animals have the memory capacity to hold grudges, as like in lesser animals, right? I don't think a dog would hold a grudge. I'm not quite sure. I don't think. No, I don't think a dog would hold a grudge. I think the the lesser an animal is, the less sophisticated, and to hold a grudge is a very sophisticated thing. It's something that takes ruminating and a lot of mental energy. You could turn your hairs gray ruminating on a vengeance, right? It's a very sophisticated thing for and a privilege most distinct in the animal that is man. So, do we find it easy to forgive because we are animals, or do we truly forgive, or do we simply cease to care? Answer: it depends. It depends. It depends on the severity. It depends on the severity of the. It depends on the severity of the perpetration of the wrongdoing. It depends on the severity of the wrongdoing, doing, whether it was done to you or to someone that you love. Because in the latter case, I think it's more difficult. Forgiveness is a very difficult thing. In any case, there was this anime I wanted to talk about. What is it called? It's this anime about like a boy king, it's so good. Like you look at the anime, you look at the animation or like the drawings, and you think it's gonna be trash. You look at the art style and you think it's bad, but no. The animation, it goes hard. The animation is hard, bro. It's so hard. It's just that you get used to the art style pretty quickly, because the story is so good. It's an easy 9 out of 10. Nowadays there's so much anime. Back in my day, right, nowadays there's so much anime, and I've gotten old. I'm in my freaking 20s, but I've gotten too old to just tune in all the time. I've gotten too old. My mom is playing. She's blasting music in the background, bro. Yeah, she's distracting me. Let me see here. Let's see. Yeah, where was I? Yeah, so there's a saturation of animation. This is a big tangent. This is actually not very appropriate. This is an inappropriate. And look, I'm gonna loop back around here. Well, anyway, let's run this through. There's so much content out there now that there's some good animes that I miss, but it's easy to miss the gemstones. They're less easier to see, but they're not as easy. They're less easy to see, but that one really stood out at the time when I got my hands on it. I got my eyes on it, and there was this arc about forgiveness. I thought there was this female character who did these very terrible things, and there was this guy who was into her, and I just thought he forgave her too easily, but you wonder why. She was like a beautiful girl. She was up to a lot of mischief. She got a lot of people killed. She literally is responsible for like an entire, like a country a country scale war, like a war. She's responsible for the death of so many people on a countrywide scale. You know, killed a lot of good characters. You know, killed a good man, killed a good woman, killed the main character's mother. Yeah, it's what is this anime called? It's something like about a boy king. It's called he's like a really small boy, and you know, even though his mother loves him, she looks down on him, and she does not believe he'll ever become king because, you know, he doesn't have the stature of his father. Yeah, it's a very great anime, but like his brother, the boy king's brother. You know, there's this girl he falls in love with, and I think I thought he forgave her too easily. I wasn't willing to forgive her at the end there. I was very surprised by the redemption. I thought, how could you forgive this woman, you know, this girl so easily? How could you forgive her so easily? How could you do that? Right? I don't believe this. This was a very good story here, but I don't believe this is good here. Right? Why would you forgive someone so easily like that? Right? Despite all those terrible things that she did, it's like he just brushed them off. You know, maybe in part because she was a pretty girl and she liked him and he wanted to marry her. You know, a man's foolishness. Right? In any case, that sort of speaks to, although in truth, actually, this freaking girl, she's actually responsible for the death of the guy's mother. Right? So that was even more foolish to me. Maybe, I don't know, that wasn't a very thought out part of the story. I would say that was not a very well thought out part of the story. That was a very cheap redemption there. It wasn't very well addressed. Even though I respect the directors and the author of that book, of that story. Mad respect. It's a very good story. It's a fantastic gem. It's very good. It's so good. There were moments where I was like, yeah, bro, like I'm on the edge of tears. This is very good. Yeah, but I remember back to that anime when I watched it. I wanted to make a video about it, but you know, nowadays I'm older, less time, so you gotta switch format a little bit, maybe a bit more quantity over quality. But you know, you gotta get there's a lot of ideas that they're very fascinating, and I'd like to talk about them. I find fascinating, and this was that.